enjoying many similar, familiar faces who were here at our last session discussing grief. And we really felt it was important to keep these conversations going. So I know a lot of you have seen our Tammy and my our driving dialogues to really humanize the conversation. We're very much a death-defying society, but these are such important conversations. A couple of years ago, I was at the Hospice Palliative Care Ontario conference, and I heard this amazing lady speak. She also had a partner with her, Dr. Sain Sao, and they together have created a book called Hope for the Best and Plan for the Rest. When I read the book, I thought that's what our community needs. This is the conversation that our people in our community need to be having. Whether we're sick or whether we're caring for someone, frankly, this conversation can help anyone. And Dr. Sammy's approach is exactly what we try to create at Hospice Huronia. So I'm thrilled that she said yes when we invited her up here. She's also going to get in the car tomorrow for a driving dialogue, so stay tuned. She will speak, and then we will have an opportunity. I'll go around with the microphone and we can answer some of your questions. If you don't want to speak out about your question, just let me know and I can come over and I can ask that on your behalf. So Dr. Winemaker is an associate clinical professor, the Department of Family Medicine in the Division of Palliative Care at McMaster University. She teaches palliative care to healthcare professionals. She won the Ontario College of Family Physician Award of Excellence in 2010, the Elizabeth J. Latimer Prize in Palliative Care in 2018, and the Dr. S. Lawrence Liebrack Award in Palliative Medicine in the community in 2019. That award is it's pretty much the creme de la creme for palliative doctors.
Sure.
Yeah, it really is, and we are just honored to have her here today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Sammy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Debbie, for inviting me on behalf of Hospice Huronia. When Debbie and I were emailing back and forth, we were talking about dates, and I thought, oh, I better come early in November because I want to catch the good weather. And so, didn't it snow on the way here? Seriously. So I guess you guys are used to it, but anyway. So thank you, Debbie, and yes, I will participate in the driving dialogues. I did look on YouTube, and it's such a great idea. I wish I thought of it myself, but anyway, we got to share the good ideas, right? Okay, so yes, I am a palliative care physician, and I'm here to share with you some of my experience and a new direction that I have pivoted to in the last few years, which has given me new energy to keep going, and I will explain. So this is the care setting where I work. This is a person's home. I work in the community. Does anyone here work in the community? Does anyone here work? Just kidding. Okay, so I see one hand, but is anyone here retired? Oh! Okay, congratulations. I work in the community, which is a care setting that really doesn't have any defined bricks and mortar. It is what we call the Wild West of healthcare settings. And it is the most incredible care setting, one that I've worked in for probably 19 years, and I absolutely love it. I'm addicted to it. It's a care setting that doesn't get the spotlight it deserves, and where people spend 99.9% of their illness journey is in the community, usually surrounded by what we call their inner crew or their family layer. So this would represent a typical home. I drive in my mobile office, my car, and I go to people's homes, and the people that I meet typically have some underlying progressive life-limiting illness. So they would have had this illness for many months or potentially many years. And the way our system operates right now, which isn't ideal, someone like me would come onto the scene at the 11th hour, usually when things are very advanced and in the end stage. So despite us advocating for earlier palliative care, I end up being mostly an end-of-life doctor. And when I go into people's homes, I take my shoes off, I hang my coat on the stair post just like I would in my own home. I never come with a white coat or a stethoscope around my neck, because naturally it is their turf, and the power differential between the healthcare provider and the patient and the family naturally evens out, which is the way it should be. And with that kind of environment, the conversation flows like it wouldn't flow in other care settings. When a person is labeled their diagnosis or their organ or a number or a room number, in the home they are a person. And the people in the home are their family or friends, neighbors, and I am a doctor, but I am invited into their home. And why I set this up for you is because I have had the privilege of receiving thousands and thousands and thousands of stories from patients and families who don't edit at all. They don't clean it up, and they don't sugarcoat things. They tell me everything. And so I have had the benefit of receiving all of these stories. And at the beginning, when I would come onto these scenes, I felt like a hero. There wasn't much I had to do at the end of life to make someone feel more comfortable. Even just my presence made them feel good, that a healthcare provider came to the home. And that was like a drug. It was like cocaine. Not that I've ever had cocaine, but like I just loved it. It was such a feel-good experience to be in someone's home and make people feel more settled when they're feeling very scared and bewildered and anxious and worried. There wasn't much I had to do to settle those feelings. But after time, I will admit to you that I started feeling very alarmed, because themes were bubbling up and repeating themselves, and there were trends I was seeing year after year. And despite the fact that people had had these illnesses for a long time, often I would find patients and families didn't really understand what their illness was all about, where they were at in their illness, and what to expect going forward. Most of them didn't even know that a palliative care doctor had been consulted, and many of them didn't know that they were dying. And so I would sit with them, because I feel that it is their right to be invited into their own illness story, and I would ask them if they were the kind of person who wanted as much information as possible about their situation. 99% of the time, people said, "Of course. Are you kidding me? If you know something that I don't know, please tell me, and please don't sugarcoat things." So over the years, I've been having these very open and honest, frank, truthful, reality-based discussions with patients and families. And the quote up here is what I hear often, which is, "Why didn't anyone tell me that earlier? I wish I would have known. If I had only known, I would have made different decisions." And so you start scratching your head and thinking, there's something not right here. Why am I continuing to see people at the end of life who have had touch points with many care teams before me, who still feel bewildered about their illness journey? Do you know who this is? Oh, oh, come on, Lucy. I don't know if we're going to get this to go. No. I don't think we'll be able to make it go. But anyway, does anyone recognize who this is? Yeah, who is it? Yeah, I love Lucy. And she's on this iconic episode where she's on a chocolate truffle conveyor belt, right? Where she and her bestie Ethel, who's right beside her, are, beginning to package the truffles, but they're coming in droves and they're coming faster and they can't keep. Who's worked on a conveyor belt before? I have. I worked in a hospital kitchen once. It's intimidating, but they come faster and more furious and they start flying everywhere. And Ethel and Lucy stuff them down their shirts and start stuffing them in their hat and stuffing them in their mouths. And you might wonder, well, what does this have to do, Winemaker, with what you're talking about? Well, I'll tell you. So if we imagine that Lucy and Ethel would represent maybe palliative care specialists, okay, palliative care specialty doctors or nurses on this conveyor belt where people are coming down the conveyor belt with whatever progressive illness they have in billions, we will never, ever, ever have enough palliative care specialists to be responsible for all the palliative care needs of people who are going to die. And, okay, spoiler alert, that's all of us, right? Only 10% of people will die suddenly from car accident, lightning, trauma. 90% of us will live long enough to get some kind of underlying progressive illness that is life-limiting, or we will get old enough that we become frail and die of aging. So there's a ton of people that are going to require palliative care, but we cannot rely on a palliative care specialty team to provide all of the palliative care. And that's sort of why I keep seeing people in their house at the end who are transferred to a palliative care doctor who have never received a palliative approach before they were labeled palliative and then get transferred to us. And it was like before that, a person didn't require palliative care, but then at some point when they said there's nothing more we can do for you, they transfer to a palliative care team. And the palliative care teams are never gonna keep up with the demand. And so over the last couple of decades, we've been trying to look at a more modern way of looking at palliative care, which I'm gonna tell you about in a second. So there's a problem with Lucy and Ethel. There's just not enough of them on this conveyor belt. But there's also a problem with the chocolates. The chocolates are the patients and the families. And they are on a conveyor belt which offers standard or typical or usual care, which is good enough for most people. But the healthcare system, if it's the conveyor belt, isn't nimble and flexible enough to individualize the care. And so the chocolates are flying all over the place and it's a little bit willy-nilly. And so we've got a problem with Lucy and we've got a problem with the chocolates. We've just got a problem. So this is an old-fashioned way of thinking about palliative care, and unfortunately it is alive and well in our healthcare system right now. So if you look at the beginning here on your left, when a person has a diagnosis of a progressive life-limiting illness, and there's many of them out there that are sometimes labeled as just chronic, many chronic conditions are not just chronic, they are progressive, meaning they change over time, and at some point will shorten someone's illness. So the old-fashioned way of looking at palliative care is someone gets a diagnosis, and then the focus of their care is on disease modifying, slowing things down as much as possible, prolonging their life as long as possible, and then just as it gets a little bit darker there, the gig is up. Sorry, there's nothing more we can do for you, you're labeled palliative, and they try to transfer you to a palliative care team. And so this is often referred to as a traditional palliative care model or a transfer of care model. And it's a big problem because most people don't want to be labeled anything, and they certainly don't want to be labeled palliative. Palliative is a loaded word, like dying and death. It's scary. And there is no weird point in time in a person's illness where suddenly they switch from being not palliative to palliative. There's no date. It suggests that before the label, they didn't require a palliative approach, and that's very problematic. That's why I'm seeing people transferred to me who have not been invited into the big picture of their illness. And by the time they get to me, they don't really know what's going on because they've gone along their illness journey on the conveyor belt with standard care and never invited into truthful, honest, realistic discussions. The doctors and healthcare providers are not lying. They're not bad people. They're well-intended, but they're busy in the day-to-day stuff of the illness, the acute, the today stuff. And often they miss the big picture of the illness until it's late and the gig is up. So the new way of thinking about palliative care is that at the beginning of a diagnosis, a palliative approach, the philosophy of palliative care, which is the darker triangle at the bottom, begins at the very start of a diagnosis. And it increases in proportion over time, right until the end. And never is there a weird point in time where someone pivots or makes a U-turn and says, you're palliative. That right from the time of diagnosis, when someone has a progressive life-limiting illness, like dementia, Parkinson's, COPD, pulmonary fibrosis, cirrhosis of the liver, chronic kidney disease, ALS, supranuclear palsy, progressive supranuclear palsy, multisystem atrophy, stage 4 cancers that are not curable. I could go on and on and on. Some cancers are curable, I should say, but many stage 4 cancers are not curable. Many of the illnesses I just mentioned are labeled chronic, but they are illnesses that move over time. They have chapters. They have beginning, middle, late, and end stage chapters. And their average life expectancy for each of those illnesses is variable. Some of those illnesses I mentioned might be months, and some of them are 15 years. But from the time of diagnosis of one of those illnesses, the system should know how to infuse a palliative approach into the care journey along the entire way. It can happen alongside life-prolonging or curative treatment or disease-modifying treatment. It's not one and then the other. They dance together in proportion and shouldn't just be delivered by a specialist like myself. Every nurse, doctor, and healthcare provider, when they go through their training, should receive adequate training so that they feel comfortable and competent to help provide the ABCs of a palliative approach. But unfortunately, our training is missing palliative care as a mandatory skill set. So I'm just highlighting some of the problems we have in the system and why over 19 years I became very frustrated and why I made a big change. So as I mentioned, most of the people that I meet in their home feel in the dark about their illness. And when someone feels in the dark, they end up having an illness journey that feels very reactive. It's crisis after crisis. They feel unaware of what's next. They feel unsure. They feel that their illness doesn't represent who they are as a person. It just feels generic and they don't recognize themselves in their illness. They feel overwhelmed, frustrated, and scared. But there are some people who seem to be more in the know. And those people's illness experience was very different. Those people seemed to be prepared. They were informed better than the others. They felt they were more confident, that their illness journey was more tailored to who they were as a person. Their journey felt more in control, they felt more in charge, and they felt hopeful along the entire way, no matter what stage they were in. So my partner, Dr. Siao, and I spent years thinking about what's the difference between these citizens that we meet who seem to be in the dark, and then there are some in the know. Why are some here and why are some here? And I won't bore you with all the details, but we think we found the Cadbury secret. Have you heard of that reference before? That commercial isn't on anymore, but it used to be on. Okay, so we think we figured out why some people have a better illness journey. Even when two people have the same diagnosis, this person can feel in the dark along the whole way, and this person can feel in the know. And so the other thing we did is we looked at the healthcare system and we identified some of the major roadblocks that naturally exist in this place called healthcare, this culture that is foreign to most people when they get this new role as a patient or a care provider. Often these are new roles for people and they're foreign and they don't get training, and then they enter onto the healthcare system scene, which is foreign, and they speak foreign language and like big words and Latin and Greek and all these, it is not an environment that is intuitive, and people can naturally end up stepping on potholes or running into hurdles or into roadblocks in the system. So we wanted to tease out who's in the know and why, who's in the dark and why, and what about the healthcare system sets people up for success or failure. And we came up with 7 keys, or 7 secrets, or 7 mindsets, or 7 tips. We talked a lot about what we should call these, but we landed on keys because we thought they would unlock what will be a better illness journey for people. And so what is so great about this? Well, I'm going to suggest that what we were so excited about was that we packaged these 7 keys to be informed by what we did at the end of life, the magic that we did with the 11th hour scramble, stitching people back together, making them feel human again. And we dragged it upstream. We gave it new words and a new vibe and a new mojo. And instead of selling that to the healthcare system, we decided to go public. We decided to go citizen-facing with tips, keys, information that would help patients and families right from the diagnosis be able to create the best illness experience possible. Even though we might not be able to change the diagnosis, we can fundamentally help people have a better illness experience. And so this was new territory for us because I was not taught as a palliative care doctor how to do this at the beginning, and nor was I ever taught how to teach citizens how to do this. So it was brave and quite frankly naive. And I can explain a little bit more about that. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the 7 keys. Are you interested? Okay, everyone awake? Okay. All right, so the first roadblock in the system when someone is diagnosed, and also in the community, is this idea that you have to stay positive when someone's diagnosed with something, that you have to be uber positive. Oh, come on, stiff upper lip. Oh, don't say that. We'll cross that bridge when it comes. You must fight, fight, fight. Come on, think positively. If we pray hard enough or wish hard enough, and there's this cheerleading that just naturally happens as human beings. And the healthcare providers are human beings too, so we all get caught up in this positivity because most of us are worried and scared. But this can be silencing for patients and families and healthcare providers. If we think we have to stay positive and that's the only way to be hopeful, then no one really talks about what's on their mind. So we came up with the first key, which is, that's interesting. this worked differently on my computer. Don't look at that orange square yet. That's the next one. So, number one, so to combat, or the antidote to this toxic positivity, is to teach people how to be able to walk two roads, to be able to hope for the best and have lots of positivity, but at the same time plan for the rest. So that planning and seeking factual, realistic, honest information from the healthcare providers does not dishonor hope. That both can exist simultaneously. In fact, hope can evolve over time and stay very high until the end, only if someone matches it with where they're at in their illness by getting truthful information. If we ignore that other road, someone will be hoping for a cure when they're still meeting me at the very end of an illness and feel very disappointed when that doesn't happen. But hope can evolve. It's an amazing, beautiful construct. At the beginning, people can hope for, they got the wrong person, they got the wrong test result. Maybe it's going to be curable. And over time, they might think, I hope there's treatment for me. And then think, I hope there's another treatment for me. Oh, I hope I can feel as good as possible for whatever time I have left. I hope that my family's okay. I hope I don't have pain at the end. I hope that my family lives the best life and they don't forget me. I hope that the world is a better place. So you can see the common thread there from beginning to end is hope. But it evolves only because that in that situation, someone understands that their underlying illness is evolving too. So the most important thing is hope for the best, plan for the rest, be able to walk two roads, and you won't get stuck in this rah, rah, rah only, and be thinking, why is everyone cheerleading? I'm not doing as well. It's so important that that's the name of our book, Hope for the Best, Plan for the Rest. Okay, so one of the other natural, I call them landmines, but I don't think that that's a good term these days. I'm gonna call it roadblocks. The other roadblock in the healthcare system, the second one, is this idea that there's no crystal ball. So this culture of healthcare that says like, oh, it's not possible to help you understand the future of your illness. And if you ask the healthcare providers, can you please tell me what's ahead? Or what's gonna happen to me? Or what's my prognosis? What's my timeline? Naturally, in healthcare, we tend to get answers like, oh, there's no crystal ball. We'll just have to take it one day at a time. But that's not true. If we teach people how to zoom out, which is the second key, how to balance being in the weeds of their illness, but also at times pulling themselves up and looking from 10,000 feet down on their illness to get the big picture storyline of whatever their diagnosis is, then they will be able to see not only today, but what's going to happen over time. But the healthcare system is really uncomfortable with that big picture stuff, and we tend to get very busy in the tests, the results, the treatments, et cetera, et cetera. But the big picture storyline of any of those illnesses that I talked about is the guidebook. It is the roadmap to the illness. And it will help people feel more landed with their feet on the ground, in control, if they not only go day to day, but they can also zoom out and say, I see the maze from 10,000 feet and where the twists and turns are. I'm not just in the hedges that are so high I can't see. So it's really important to know how to zoom out. Every illness has a natural history, a well-known storyline. The person might be the first one to get that. For them, it's their first time having that diagnosis. But billions of people have had, for example, COPD before. We know what COPD acts like. We know the rhythm of COPD. We know the chapters of COPD and how it looks when someone transitions through the different chapters. And same with all those other illnesses. It is your right to have this big picture snapshot of your illness and know where X marks the spot, where you're at. And that helps people feel more grounded. The next, I keep saying landmine, roadblock. Thank you, you're listening. The next roadblock is this idea that, this assumption that the disease is the main driver of the experience. So like once you get a diagnosis, I'm just gonna go through the COPD disease or the Parkinson's or the MS or whatever it is. But the truth is that you all could have the exact same illness. The disease does its thing, the illness does its thing, it's got a biological, medical rhythm to it, but each one of us will have a different illness experience because we are each different. And we each have different coping mechanisms, for better or worse. If we just look back on our past and think about a time where we ran into a snag or a major challenge, and think about what helped you get through that and what didn't help you get through that, and what your natural personality traits are like. Are you an information seeker, or are you someone who likes to hide their head in the sand? Do you like to face things straight on, or do you like to run away from things? All of these qualities will help you to understand when you get a serious illness, how you're going to perform, how that illness is going to feel for you and your family. And it's very empowering because you can predict what it's going to be like. Like I know when I usually have CN beside me, sometimes I say, I know exactly how he's going to be if he has an illness because I know him so well. We've been working so closely together for so many years. I know exactly what he's going to be like, and he would say the same thing. He knows exactly what I would be like. And that's powerful because you can start predicting things. And I usually tell people, you can do the same thing with your family members or your inner crew. So I say to my people, I know my sister will show up with a casserole day one. And I know my brother will never come around because I know their styles. So I won't be mad at my brother. It's his style. And I'll be grateful for my sister. It's her style. So, that seems very simple, but when you really think about it, it's very powerful because it sets you up for realistic expectations, and you can take your own pulse and figure out how you're going to do this journey. The next roadblock is that the doctor knows best. The doctor does not know best. You know best. Customize your order means that you can dig deep and begin to learn what you value most. And what are the things that you're willing to trade off or not trade off? And if you know that about yourself, you can use that as almost like a terms of reference or terms of engagement. And every time you are met with a big decision in your illness journey, you bring that forward and say, how will this decision be impacted by my values, Sammy's values, or what I'm willing to trade off? And it will help me make decisions. It will help me not feel like I'm on a conveyor belt. It's like if you all went to a private school and everyone had to wear the same uniform. You still can nip and tuck your uniform just a little to make it personalized. You might put a pin here. You might take your hem up a bit. You might put your collar up. So this is about understanding yourself and how you can customize your illness journey so that you don't feel like you're on a conveyor belt. It doesn't mean it's carte blanche, that you can ask for anything and everything in the healthcare system, but it means that you can have truly personalized illness journey. Okay, we're almost done with the 7 keys. We have the 5th one, so the roadblock is it's all about the patient. When someone gets a diagnosis, automatically there is so much attention paid to the patient, which is appropriate for sure. They're the star of the show. But we also know that there is a ripple effect on the people around them. And again, these keys we we harness this information at the beginning of an illness so that we're not downstream in the illness journey suddenly realizing how much this illness is affecting the family. And someone has just serendipitously become a caregiver. And they didn't realize that until deep into the illness journey. This is about taking all of what we learned and bringing it upstream and sharing it with people right from the beginning so that when someone gets a diagnosis, they have a fighting chance to get prepared and stay ahead. So there's a ripple effect on the family. And so this is about taking the spotlight not just on the patient and broadening it to include the people in their life. It is a team sport having an illness, and everyone becomes the unit of care. And there are different roles that bubble up when someone has an illness. The other assumption is that the system is a well-oiled machine, and it does its best, but it's imperfect. Are you surprised? No. Okay. It's imperfect. And so why wait until, again, people are so busy at, further down, feeling very worried and anxious to suddenly realize that they feel like things are being lost or that they feel out of control. Right from the beginning, we tell people someone in your inner crew, if it's not going to be yourself as the patient, needs to be the manager of the illness and connect the dots. We called this at the beginning, tag your it. So the patient and family do play a role. They are better off. The people who are in the know seem to be able to, bless you, connect the dots. They would be able to keep a binder or something that kept all the information in it. And as the journey unfolded, they had all this organized way about their illness journey that's separate from the healthcare official chart. It was their own patient and family chart, and that becomes an important piece. And then last but not least, this idea that no news is good news, and that if you're a good patient, you'll get better care. And if you're passive and polite and you just sit there and say yes to everything, and you come well dressed and you're lovely and quiet and don't ask questions, that you'll get the best care possible. You'll make your doctor happy. No, those people get nowhere. We need people to invite themselves, which really means ask questions, find your voice, whatever's on your mind. I worry when I meet very quiet, passive, go with the flow kind of people. I'm tickled pink when I find a patient or someone in their family that's, excuse me, Dr. Winemaker, I just did not understand that. Can you go over that again? Or, we've got 6 questions for you. So just so you know, you might be here for a while. These are the people I know that are going to fare better. So this is about not being a passive passenger in the back seat of the illness journey and knowing it is your right to step or crawl into the front seat of your illness and start driving and being more respectfully assertive or empowered or activated. So these are the secrets that we found why some people end up having a better illness journey than others. They seem to be in the know versus those who are in the dark. The people who are in the dark just try to stay hopeful. They just take it one day at a time. They forget themselves. They just go on the conveyor belt. The family is invisible. They just have full trust in the healthcare system, and they stay very quiet. Those people are at risk. So what did we do? We said, okay, well, this is great. We have all this great information that came from all the stories. We deconstructed all the stories and all my colleagues' research, and we came up with these amazing 7 keys. Well, now what? Now what do? We start a social movement. Well, we'd never done that before. We started a revolution. We started a peaceful revolution called the waiting room revolution. And so this is the social movement that we started some years ago, a couple years ago. And we called it the waiting room revolution because it is in the waiting room, literally, where I feel like there's the biggest power differential between the patient or family sitting in the cold waiting room, waiting for whatever. The doctor, what's the doctor gonna say? The test results, the information. It's just a feeling of having no power. And figuratively, the waiting room, like just going with the flow. I think there's something I need to know, but no one's told me, so I guess, I don't know, I'm not doing as well, but no one's saying anything. So we wanted a waiting room revolution, both literally and figuratively. So that's what we did. So we started a website called thewaitingroomrevolution.com. And the first thing we did is we started a podcast. And I had never listened to a podcast before we did this. Has anyone here listened to a podcast? Yeah? Okay, great. I had never. So we just said, okay, well, we'll do that because it seems to be pretty popular. So Cien went in his closet and I went in my closet because did you know your closet is a great sound room? Did you know that? Well, anyway, so he was there and I was there, and virtually I said to my husband, I need a lot more clothes. The sound is so much better. So I went shopping, padded my closet, and we had great sound. Anyway, so we had this podcast that we developed, and we talked to all sorts of people about their illness journey, all sorts of interesting people. And season 1 is the heart of our podcast. We are now dropping, that's a cool word, dropping podcast season number 7. And we are just working on season 8 coming up in the spring. But it's been very popular. And I highly recommend, if you like podcasts, and this is free, you just, wherever you get your podcasts, listen to season 1. It's my favorite of all the seasons. Skip over season 2. Don't tell anyone. Go right to season 3 after that. Okay. So the podcast. So we have who knows who Biff Naked is? Okay, I didn't either. She's a punk rock star. Canadian. No punk rockers in here? Okay, well anyway, we have all these interesting people. Does anyone know Catherine Mannix or Hospice Nurse Julie? These are, some people do. Oh, come on guys. Anyway, so we have lots of interesting guests. We have had over 90,000 downloads. With no training, no fancy equipment, and nothing really, just our closets. We're rated in the top 1.5% of global podcasts and listened to in 82 countries. We can't even believe it. And we have 5-star ratings on Apple Podcast. Anyway, it was great to meet all these people, and we were getting signals because of how popular this podcast was, that we did the right thing. That going citizen-facing, obviously there was an interest and a craving and a need for more information about this topic. So we kept going. And we decided to make ourselves even more uncomfortable. And let's go on every social media platform we can think of, even though the two of us only knew how to email. 2 years ago, we decided to go on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and Twitter, which is now called X. And so it was a huge learning curve for both of us. But the beautiful thing about social media is that right away you get feedback, instantaneously, like, your hair is horrible, or you sound nasal, or this is incredible. I never knew that before, and you've changed the way I think about things. Had I not looked at X, Y, and Z, I would have had a completely different illness story. I'm sharing this with everyone. So we got enough feedback again to say, keep going. And so we had our podcast, we're on social media platforms, and we also do presentations as much as possible, because neither of us know how to start a social movement, to be honest. Has anyone here started a social movement? Call me later, because we're learning every day. But we didn't know. So this is why, okay, we'll get a website and we'll put lots of different feeders out, because we want the citizens of the world, the public, to have this information. Because we believe that if there are enough people that learn how to be a different kind of patient and family and come to the healthcare system in droves like a tidal wave, they'll have to change. Sneaky, huh? So anyway, so we're going out and about, trotting all over the place, even to Midland, which I'm enjoying, to help people, to beg people, we can lock the doors, to join the revolution with us, okay? We also are very happy when other people take our information and adapt it to theirs. So this is Health Canada. Health Canada approached us and they were doing a palliative approach or serious illness campaign, and they took some of our keys and adapted them, and they have something on their website called What to Do When Facing a Serious Illness, the 3 most important questions you should ask your healthcare provider. And our logo is down there in the corner. So this was, again, another green light for us. You're doing something that's needed out there. And so this is our new drug. We're like, yes, keep going. And so we wrote a book. And that was the next thing we did. And so this book is, because not everyone will listen to a podcast or be on social media platforms or be in an audience like this. So we have a book. And so the book comes in an electronic version and also an audio book, and it comes in a hard copy as well. And we are hoping that this book fundamentally changes the illness experience from here forward. It has tons of information in it that is positive and hopeful, but without sugarcoating the reality of things. It is the book that is going to help people secretly leach out, extract out of the uncomfortable healthcare system how to receive the magic of a palliative approach along the entire illness journey, with ever labeling it palliative or dying or death. It has become a guidebook for just human-centered care. So I am hoping that the next measurement at some point for whether or not this is working or not will be when I go into people's homes and people feel like they recognize themselves in their illness. They feel like they've been well prepared. They feel like they understand where they're at in their illness, that they have celebrated so many things with the time that they've had, and that there's beautiful silver linings to an underlying serious illness. And so this is the revolution, this is the social movement, and this is what we're hoping you're all going to join us in. I don't know if you know about these QR codes. Most people do. If you're interested, you can hold your phone up to this QR code, and it will take you to our website. And on our website, we have multiple different ways that you can help fan this fire. How you, starting tomorrow, can be part of this revolution and help change the healthcare system so that when we get our ticket, that we have a better and in control, in the know illness experience. So, be gone with the in the dark. Let's hope we can move to in the know. Oh, did someone want me to go back to the QR code? Sorry. Okay, sorry. I take a sip of my water. Should I be smiling? You're not taking much. I have little cards with me with the QR code on it too, so I can hand them out. And if you want to join us on social media, does anyone have Instagram here? Yeah? Oh, I'm Sammy.winemaker. Okay? So, we want to move from, oh, you want me to go back? I'll give you a card. Okay. Okay, so bye-bye in the dark, hello in the know. And we're hoping that these 7 keys help people move from this side to this side. And you're all invited to be part of this. It is a peaceful revolution. We came out with this around the time that Donald Trump and the whole, revolution. So we have to keep saying this is a peaceful revolution. And so this is us, hope for the best, plan for the rest, and our waiting room revolution. But there's lots of space here for everyone. This isn't about me. This isn't about the waiting room revolution. This is about you guys knowing what your rights are as patients and families, and knowing how to be in those roles so that you extract the information that you need from an uncomfortable healthcare system that needs to change and will change when all of you go and say, hello, doctor. Today, I'd like to share with you that I am the kind of person who wants to walk 2 roads. We can hope for the best here, doctor, but I also want you to be honest and open and truthful with me about everything. I give you permission to speak openly to me. And at times, let's zoom out. And so the doctor at first will be like, you're weird. And then when more people come in and say these things, they're going to be like, what is going on here? Why is everyone using these weird terms? I better learn what that is. And so you're all part of our experiment. So I hope that you found that interesting, and that's it. Wrap up.
Now I am. Oh. I told you she was awesome, didn't I? We have some books available, so we brought them out. We also, our local bookstores are also knowledgeable that all of you are going to go out and tell your friends, and these books are going to be flying off the shelves. So we have some available. We'll also take them back to Tompkins House and have them available there. But tonight, Dr. Sammy will stay back and autograph anything that you would like. And I know you've got some questions out there. So is anybody ready to start us off, or do I start us off? All right. Oh, there we go. I'll walk back there.
I can speak loud too.
Yep.
I'm just curious, what do you do with the other 1% who doesn't want to know?
Yeah.
When it becomes critical and they're symptomatic and having issues, what's the approach with them?
Yes, thank you for asking. So the question is, what do you do when someone doesn't want to know? And that is fair, as long as they've been invited. So as long as, for example, I have said, or someone says, how much do you want to know about your illness? We have more information about how this illness is going to change over time. Are you the kind of person who wants to know? And if the person says, absolutely not, that is not the way I roll, absolutely not, then what I typically say is, no problem, I am going to honor whatever you want, whatever your style is. Is it okay if I share with you my experience having cared for lots of people, and then I might just share with them that the people that feel brave enough to have more information actually feel better. That whatever is so scary that a person doesn't want to know, it's actually knowing that makes them feel better. That people actually feel better with information, for better or worse. There's nothing more unsettling than being in the twilight zone. And so I share that with people, and I share about the in the know and in the dark people, and then I might ask again, before I go, is there anything you want to know about your illness? And if they still say no, then I say, no problem. Just know that you're always invited. It is your right to know. But at least they've been asked. And then I might search in their family for someone. Does anyone here want to know? Because if I can find one person who will know more, then I feel more comfortable. So it's about the invitation, not forcing.
Interesting on that note as well, Dr. Sammy, because we hear it in hospice. I'm looking at my team back here, they all seem to be sitting here. When we get a family member that'll say, could you just tell my mom that she's going to a spa? That she's
Yeah.
not right, and we struggle because
Yeah.
we want to be forthright with them, but those conversations aren't happening.
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, well, I have worked at many hospices as well, and yeah, we have had people come in who think it's rehab or restorative care or respite sometimes. So first and foremost, I remind myself that it's coming from a place of caring, and so that's where I start. That they're protecting their loved one. And then I might ask the family, is it okay? So I respect for sure what you're saying. Is it okay if I ask your loved one some questions? I won't come out and tell them anything, but can I gently ask them some questions about what's on their mind? And most families will say, oh, sure. And then I have my sneaky ways of saying, so, how are you? Okay, so welcome to the hospice. You arrived here, or welcome. You arrived here last week. Do you have any questions about what we do here? Is there anything on your mind right now? When you're sleeping at night, is there anything that you think about that you'd like to share with us? Does your mind ever wander into the future? And I have a million ways of going at it, and what I'm trying to do is get the patient themselves to say, I know I'm dying. You know, they usually come out with something like that, or, of course I know what's happening here. And it sort of bursts the bubble and brings the elephant out of the room. And then I just look at the family and I didn't say anything, you know, but you can learn techniques to have the patient and family admit to each other that they've been protecting each other with this code of silence, but really they both know. There's rarely a time where a patient really doesn't know that they're declining and deteriorating from something, unless they're not competent.
Questions? Anyone? Oh.
Just the question of delayed diagnosis, how that affects the family and the client, because I've come across lately, especially after COVID, so many instances where people have been put off, sent to a specialist,
Mm-hmm.
and they're waiting, and there's 6 months, and there's 8 months, and surgery's looking like 2 or 3 years away. That's really hard to cope with as a family, and as the person themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if there's any. We don't have an instant cure, but is there ways that at least the members of the family can help bond themselves and know what they want, even though it might not be available right away?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm understanding your question. I agree with you that ever since COVID, people are presenting really late in their illness. It used to be that people would, have, for example, a cancer of stage 2, and then it might end up stage 3, and then it might end up stage 4. So many people are presenting right now with stage 4 cancer. It's uncanny. And it does make the time frame much shorter to get everyone skilled up and knowledgeable and feeling grounded and prepared and ready, and it's like the landing strip has shortened and everyone's emotions are heightened, and you have to do a lot of work in a much shorter period of time. But I believe that the underpinning is always still to offer honest, open, truthful information to even families who are scrambling with a very late stage diagnosis. But we have to understand that there's going to be a lot of emotions, and so it's going to feel differently for those patients and families, and it's going to feel differently for the healthcare team as well. So yeah, it's much more tricky. I mean, my dad had a diagnosis of a stage 4 glioblastoma in 2020, and he was diagnosed in March and died in May. And we thought he might have about 18 months. So I have felt that flurry. And it is like you've been, time has been stolen. Time has been stolen that would allow a patient and a family to begin the grieving process and to move through the anticipatory grief that helps people protect themselves for an eventual loss. Gets very shortened, and it starts feeling like a sudden death experience instead of an expected death, and it becomes more complicated in these scenarios. So it's complicated. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure I did. It's complicated. I don't have the answer for everything. I'm honest.
I have another question.
Sure.
So, small community, North Simcoe area that we have here.
Mhm.
You talk a lot about the other diseases, right? The cancers are very easy. Well, not easy, but you understand the trajectory if someone has a stage 4 colon cancer, for example. The more challenging ones, the COPDs, all the rest of it. Here in this community, we do not have those specialists, like a Parkinson's specialist or an ALS specialist. We see them coming into the hospice, and it's harder for us to see that trajectory of what an end of life for an ALS patient might look like. Where do we reach out for support and help? Like, who can we know that there's you down there in Hamilton that have this information, but how do we do that here locally?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the first place I would probably look are the societies, you know, like the ALS Society or the Heart and Stroke Foundation, like whatever illness it is, normally there is a foundation, a society, an association. And many of them have amazing information for patients and families. Also the Canadian Virtual Hospice, which is online, and anyone in the public can just search the Canadian Virtual Hospice. They have disease-specific information as well. And it's interesting you asked that, because Sienna and I, in our next phase of work, now that the book is out, we are actually going to have a course, and we're also going to have workbooks for all the different illnesses and illness trajectories. So illness roadmaps or guidebooks for every illness, so that someone can pick it up and learn what are the specifics. And then, you know, I think COVID, if anything good came out of COVID, it would be that specialists should be more comfortable working in a virtual platform. So there are ways to consult specialists virtually these days, and so that is possible, or to Zoom people in or FaceTime people in. But those are some of the resources, and we're going to be coming out with some as well, and that'll make us very happy.
Brilliant, can't wait. Any questions? Anyone else? Yes?
Just coming from a nurse perspective that goes out to the community and doing similar things to yourself, not quite to that extent, but I find a lot of people get stuck at that number 4, where the doctor knows best. So building that rapport with the patient and their family, the roadblock is true, it's there. They don't want to share any more information, and they get stuck, and they don't want to hear what I have to say or any of the other nurses. Like, how do we get past that? Because all due respect to doctors, they have a lot of information, but some of those challenging questions aren't being had, and people are finding out prognosis through paperwork.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge disconnect. So just coming back to the nurse perspective, like, how do we start, you know, interweaving those connections with the doctor and the patient, and it's trust building, but
yeah, so that would be another roadblock, right? So this is why we are trying to help patients and families understand that that is not to their best advantage, to just assuming that the doctor knows best, right? And I have met so many nurses that suffer terribly because they feel that they are witnessing a gap, and that they're seeing the doctors so busy, so uncomfortable, and they can read the body language or get the questions from the patients and families when the doctor leaves, and they feel that they can't give the information because the doctor really hasn't been forthright. So not specific to that situation, but generally speaking, what I would be doing if I was a nurse and didn't feel I had the answers is just preparing the patient and family with the types of questions that are typically asked and that would benefit them. So you might benefit from asking your doctor X, Y, and Z. Did you know that it's possible to know where you're at in your illness journey? Did you know that your doctor probably has more information and is waiting for you to ask? And the truth is that we've had some retired doctors on our podcast who basically said, had people told me that they wanted to know, and I would have felt much more comfortable having the conversation with them. This person said to us, I felt always really uncomfortable initiating the conversation, but if someone came in and sat me down and said, I really want to know about X, Y, and Z, I suddenly felt the permission to speak openly. So I think the best thing you can do as a nurse is really ask people what's on their mind. If something's not on their mind, tell them what should be on their mind. Well, many patients ask about da 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 da, and sort of like prepare them for their next visit with the doctor.
So that's a great point. Tammy is our supportive care coordinator, new position for Hospice Huronia. And I always say, when you showed the graph with the palliative approach to care, so Tammy's job is to start right at that diagnosis, and she's gonna literally hold the hand of the patient.
Where's
and
Tammy?
the caregiver. She's right there.
Oh, there's Tammy,
Right?
yes.
So she's gonna do that. That
Yes.
is her role now in our community.
Okay,
is to
outreach.
do that, right?
Oh, I love that.
And then
Yes.
the two, I believe there's only 2 of our nurses here, if there's anybody else out there, let me see, but, and then lovingly pass them off to the rest of our team at Tompkins House.
Yeah.
And Dr. Cameron is here, I think Dr. Woods is also here, and that's, again, this is what's happening in your community right here, is we are starting, and this is our responsibility to provide you with this information. Now that we've opened hospice, we've taken care of 350 patients in the last 3 years, during COVID, by the way. It is our responsibility to make sure, because we see exactly what you're talking about, the families in the know and the families in the dark. And it's a gift to be in the know from all perspectives.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? One of the first chapter, I won't forget it, we were talking about the gentleman whose biggest fear was he was going to drown,
Yeah,
right?
was suffocating.
Breathing, pain, right? But it sounded to me like that chapter, as you were talking about empowering him to say, let us try, let us do, these are medications now. And to me, that was, I thought, very empowering to the patient.
Yeah, there are so many misconceptions about dying and death. And it is really scary because most people assume that dying is like a light switch, but really it's more like a dimmer over time, and that people think it's going to be painful, or that they're going to suffocate or choke, et cetera, and that's what happens automatically when dying starts, and that is not the case. So this is the biggest reason for the person who asked why people don't want information, is because they're scared of what you're going to tell them, because what they assume is going to be told to them. But when they hear, has pain been a part of your story so far? No. Well, guess what? It's very unlikely to bubble up here. I predict for you a soft landing. Really? You're kidding. Maybe I don't want, dare I say, a medically assisted death, because we do get a lot of people who are so scared of dying and death because of all that Hollywood has set us up for, that they anticipate these things and would rather, die by assisted death, which I don't judge. It is legal in Canada, but what we don't want is people coming to that request and decision with misinformation. So it's really important that people understand and have factual information, because, I'll be honest with you, I personally am not ready to die. I'm just not. And if I got something today, I'd be pissed. But to be honest with you, when my time comes and I get something, I am not scared of dying. It's because I am so in the know. You couldn't be more in the know than I am. I've cared for so many people. I have seen so many beautiful, amazing moments that people wouldn't trade for the world. And that's the beauty of being in the know, is time is on your side, and time is the currency in the illness. It is the superpower, knowledge and time. And then you can then do what you need to do as a person, as opposed to dying suddenly from lightning and, leaving people behind with regrets or complicated grief, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not scared of dying, but I'm just not ready.
And it won't kill you to talk about it, who was
Yeah.
another author we brought last year.
Yeah, Kathy Cortez Miller. Yeah,
right.
she's awesome.
All right, won't kill you to come for a tour of Tompkins House. We have cookies, and I think you'll taste some of them at the back. Are there any more questions out there? Yep.
I'm a nurse, and I've worked with doctors and other nurses for a long time. I'm 61 years.
Wow,
I'm graduated.
what's the secret?
I was just thinking, did you know when you started your education that you would end up here?
On this stage?
No, like doing palliative
In palliative care? No, not for a second. But the funny thing is that I have students with me all the time, medical students, sometimes nursing students, residents, medical residents, and they drive around with me and they're deep into their training and they turn to me and they say, "This is the best."
Yeah.
There's a lot of doctors that retire and go into palliative care. Why? And why do these students find it so incredible? It's because it brings people home to the reason why they went into medicine. Palliative care is a philosophy and approach to care that is very humanized and person-centered. And it focuses on quality of life and people's values. And that's the reason why most nurses and most doctors went into their field. But somewhere along the way, as doctors, we get sometimes lost in that. It gets washed away. And then they come back to it in retirement, or the students have been in training and they haven't seen it and suddenly say, "What is this specialty? It's incredible." And so it really shouldn't be reserved for a specialist. It should be part of the training for everyone.
So is it an elective that you take?
Yeah.
Palliative?
So, you want to know about me specifically?
No, generally.
Yeah, generally.
When they go into, doctors go in for their training,
Yeah.
education,
Yeah.
do they have to take something
No,
like that?
they don't.
Because it's evident that with some, that they've never.
This is the problem, and you're so right. And this is why we are still scratching our heads, because can you believe that a hospice volunteer gets about 30 to 50 hours of training? In medical school, they get about 3 hours on average. And in the practical training, there's no mandatory palliative care across Canada. And so they might do it as an elective or a selective, or just by avoiding orthopedic surgery, they're going to do this thing called palliative care. But no, it's not mandatory. Can you believe it? I had to learn how to deliver babies. Everyone has to learn how to deliver babies. And most people, when they graduate from medicine, go into their specialty, they're not delivering babies. But everyone is going to have to care for someone with a serious illness. There's really not a medical specialty where you're not going to touch point with someone who you need to treat as a human. So we're working on it.
We really love our retired doctors who come out of retirement. And then
Yes.
he's not looking at me.
Thank
here.
goodness.
But right, we're grateful that they do that. And in fact, Dr. Winemaker will join us for breakfast tomorrow at Tompkins House just for doctors. So we've got a lovely breakfast being put on by our volunteer Nicole, and Dr. Winemaker will be joining us again to try and I'm thinking the word osmosis is to try and get it to just seep very gently, as you say, out into our community. But the reality is, you're right, these are the people that you need to be talking to, empowering our own voices. Right?
Yeah, we have to do both ends.
I can talk about it.
Okay.
I'm just curious, do you have a recommendation, a book resource for nursing students or medical students that if they're not?
Ta-da. Okay. So I do get, 0.0000000 penny for every 4 million sold, but so I have to declare that. But I really honestly, the next thing we're going to do is try to get this into the curriculum of nursing and medicine, to be honest. Are there other resources? Yeah, there are, but not specifically for medical learners around these topics. There's, Tuesdays with Maury, and there's Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, and there's Talking About Death Won't Kill You by Kathy Cortez Miller, and Catherine Mannix has Listen, and what's her other one? With the End in Mind, yeah, beautiful books. So there's lots of beautiful books, but they're not specific textbooks for doctors and nurses. Yeah.
Thank you for your conversation this evening. It's interesting to me, we're all going to end up at the same endpoint, one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me that this isn't part of a curriculum, that it's not mandated by the OMA or the CMA. Do you have any sense of why that is?
Yeah, it's not just the OMA, it's across Canada. And also in the US. I think it's because we have valued technology and interventions, and we see our role in healthcare as providing very active, action-oriented, curative, fixing kind of culture. I think the people in healthcare are human, and we do exist in a rather death-denying society, and death is seen as a failure. Society would have us believe that beauty and youth prevails, and none of us should get older and get anything, and so we're just all human, and we're all caught up in it, and so there's a big push for a public health approach to palliative care, which really is another movement that is looking at how to raise society's overall mortality awareness. So the awareness that dying is part of living. It is part of the human condition. And that we can't just have that spoiler alert at the end of life when you're older. That even kids in kindergarten or younger should learn about dying when the school goldfish in their classroom dies, that the teacher should not sneak in at night and switch it with another, twin goldfish, that we should talk about the fact that a goldfish lives for a certain amount of time and it dies when you overfeed it. Or when the leaves change colors and they drop to the ground. And there's so many ways to talk about dying from the very big younger people so that they grow up just knowing it's just part of life. It's got to change though, so if you have any clout, you look like you do. No?
I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor. I was
Lucky.
an advocate, I guess, or a caregiver.
Yeah.
And I commend you. This is wonderful, and all the steps are really, really helpful for the caregiver and the family. Once we were in the palliative care process, or we had the doctor, it was wonderful, and it was a much better experience. But getting there is the real frustration for the family. And I think more work has to be done with the doctors. They're not a team. An oncologist won't call the family doctor. You have to relay that message. They seem to want to stay in their lane.
In their silos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really hard on the family. You're just trying to put all these puzzle pieces together. You don't know what you're doing. You're learning on the job. And you're not part of the same team. And that's probably the biggest frustration we found through the process.
Yeah.
Once we were with a palliative care doctor, once we went to hospice and got the information there, that part was better. But navigating the doctor's systems that they have within their offices was the hardest part.
Really challenging, yeah. And that, yeah.
I'm with her.
Yes, I could tell.
So, just to back up a little bit, we lost my dad a little over 2 months ago, and we had an opportunity to meet the wonderful Debbie, who's got several halos around her, I'm sure, and her team at Hospice Huronia and Tompkins House and so on. I can't tell you the comfort that we got just from knowing that they were there. My dad was he passed away, as I say, a couple of months ago at age 97. He was a terribly stubborn guy, and his whole life he was a real mind over matter guy, refused to go for diagnosis. The roadmap that you've given us, the 7 steps and so on, is absolutely wonderful, but in my dad's case, we didn't have a clue what really killed him. Because he was too stubborn to go, he was too afraid, too stubborn to go to the system to find out what was really wrong with him. And but thank goodness for Dr. Cochran, who's one of the best young doctors we've ever met. That was his palliative. He was assigned as a palliative doctor for my dad in his home. Nurse Laura, Nurse Bobby, there were several that were just like angels. And but anyway, I guess my point is that anybody that hasn't been to Tompkins House yet, I'm going to give you a commercial here, Deb, because you really deserve it. You got to go and just check it out. It's just such even though my father was too stubborn to want to go to hospice, and we begged him, finally with Dr. Cochran's help, he agreed to go at the last moment. He died 14 hours after he arrived there. But the support that we got before and after that from Debbie and from her team was absolutely astounding. And you've got all our full support on everything that you do. In any case, we're always there for you. If you need some help in the community or whatever, we're just so grateful for your help and for all the people that helped us.
So wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking around this audience, there's many people, Armin, who have been through Tompkins House and experienced just what the two of you have. And I would have to say to you that hats off to you guys for taking care of your loved ones as well, and carefully and thoughtfully as you did, and then coming to us when you needed us, right? And the best gift you can give us is to share this message with other people so that they aren't fearful of what a hospice offers. Oftentimes, and if your dad had maybe been a little bit earlier, I'm sure he would have said, I should have come here earlier, right? We hear that a lot, where they're very hesitant to come, then they come and join us and say, this is the type of care that every person deserves. Doesn't matter where you've come from. So, very good.
It's probably that stubbornness that got him to 97, did you say? And probably the fact that he's, refused everything.
Just so I've got the last word, but my dad was the kind of guy that I really think his stubbornness did get him there, as you said. And he was a very much, like I said, mind over matter. And when he realized that he was dying and that he was going to hospice, he just gave up and he was gone in a matter of hours, And so that's what got him to that age. And so you can't undermine the importance of conviction.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's really hard on the people that love the one that's being cared for.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Debbie helped us a lot with that too. So thank
But
you.
it's a good example of the key know your style, because if someone has been strong-minded, strong-headed, stubborn their entire life, have you ever heard the saying, you die as you live? I did not make that up. You die as you live. So people's, deep-rooted traits usually stay throughout their life. And why is that helpful? Because when someone, for example, like your dad might say, no, I refuse this, that, and the other thing, instead of getting frustrated with someone, and I'm not talking about your situation, you would look back and say, this is his style. This is the way he's lived his life, and this matches who he is. Okay, we can go along with this now. So this is the kind of thing that you can harness instead of feel frustrated about. But I love that about your dad. Must have been difficult, but I do love it.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, I'm going to make my way up to the stage. And,
Oh.
Yeah, I'm coming. Here I come. We were
She's
going to
coming
get
in for a hug.
I'm coming in for a hug. I feel like Monty Hall, and let's make a deal. I was going to get you flowers, and then I thought, no, I'm not going to get you flowers. I'm going to get you red wine. This was, it was one of my hopes is after I heard Dr. Sammy speak that we could have this message come. And so I'm so pleased that she came. Also to her mother for accompanying her. You must be so proud. I watched you look at her book out there and I thought, you know what, how beautiful is that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she behaved. My sister texted her, don't ask questions.
I just want to thank all of you for attending and continuing these dialogues that we're having. To my team, where are you out there? Put your hands up. There you are. Team Tompkins, our volunteers, you're amazing. And just say, I don't know if any of you recognize the dragonfly. It's a big part of our team, Team Tompkins. When we opened those doors, remember that, Karen? During the COVID, and we talked about what was going to be meaningful to our team, and it was the dragonfly. And Tammy created this, and we have a big one at Tompkins House. You'll see it tomorrow. And Tammy has put the names of every person that's come through Tompkins House on the wings. And so it's very, very meaningful for our team. So remember to, if you haven't been for a tour, come for a tour. If you're interested in volunteering, are you aware that this is National Volunteer Managers Week? Kelly, have a great week. Kelly is our volunteer manager, and she oversees 150 hospice volunteers, of which I think there's a ton of you here tonight. So thank you. Don't go away. Have a book signed. If you don't want to get one tonight, we will have them at Tompkins House. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Sammy.
My pleasure. Thank you.